Donald is the most masterful manipulator of the conventions of journalism I have ever seen. Donald understands, first of all, that most journalists are very good at accurately quoting people and accurately getting other sides of the story and quoting them, but have no deep understanding of what's going on. And he exploits that. He knows that the tabloids, especially Rupert Murdoch's New York Post, have no real regard for any set of facts. They'll take a good story any day of the week. So he plants a story that his longtime mistress, whom I knew about long before anybody wrote about her, but I didn't regard it as a story. Billionaire has mistress. No, plane takes off in Washington, lands in LA. Not a story in either case. He plants this story with a big picture of his smiling face on the cover of the Post. Best sex ever. Marla Maples, by the way, as you'll read in the book, has disclaimed that statement. She didn't make it. He creates this image of himself as this Midas. It's all a fraud. It is a fraud. There's nothing there. And I know some of you are going to want to ask, how much is he worth? And I'm going to tell you, I don't know, but I know he's not worth, as he said in a matter of days last year, 8.7 billion, 10 billion, more than 10 billion, 11 billion. What I do know is what Donald said under oath when he had to answer questions about how much are you worth. And he said, well, it depends on my emotional state. And the lawyer goes, excuse me, the lawyer who is now the head of enforcement at the SEC. And he asks a little further, and Donald says, well, yeah, I mean, it depends on how I'm feeling that day. That's, what's happening in the world and how my mood is. That's how I determine my net worth. Now, if this guy wasn't running for president of the United States, I think we'd all agree, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. That is, nobody does it that way. And throughout his life, Donald has gotten away with this because almost nobody challenges him. Wayne Barrett, probably the best reporter who ever worked in New York City, who got onto Donald very early on and wrote about him at length in the Village Voice, and who, despite working at the Village Voice, had the most extraordinary law enforcement sources of any reporter I've ever known. And I, and a guy named Neil Barsky at the Wall Street Journal, until Donald pulled a trick on him and he got fired, we were basically the only people really examining Donald. Everybody else, he was a good story. What are you going to go do a bunch of work for? Donald said this thing, and it's a good story. And we would say, yeah, well, let's go look up the records. And we would question what was going on. So before we go to questions, I want to get across to you that the person you have seen, the image created by Donald Trump with the complicity of our major national news organizations who are utterly failing in their duty with a few notable exceptions. The Washington Post has tried pretty hard. One TV reporter, Katie Tur, has at least asked the tough follow-up questions on him. By and large, Donald Trump has gotten from the press what he wants, to create this image that he is the modern Midas, that, as he said, I alone can save you. That's not the statement of a leader of a free people in a democracy. That's the statement of a would-be dictator. He has said, I love the blacks. And you would think most journalists, even white journalists, would have enough sense to say, boy, that's an interesting way to phrase that statement. And they might want to go look up the times that Donald has been found to have engaged in discrimination against blacks and women and Asians. Found to have done so, been fined for it. They're not doing that. Why is he on all the time? Why has he gotten what by the last measure I saw, was more than $4 billion of free media? Because he's like a train wreck. People won't turn away from the TV. Fox News has put out the story that when they turned off Donald, people turn off their TVs or go to another channel. This is no way to run a democracy. This is serious business. And unlike Donald Trump, who can say in his TV show something totally contrary to sound business practice, and I say this as somebody who, I teach graduate business students and law students, part-time, you're fired. He can't fire the dictator in North Korea. He can't fire the Speaker of the House. He can't fire a federal judge who issues an order he doesn't like. Donald Trump tells you he has this sort of vague plan. He's going to build a wall. He's going to get the trillions of dollars, or certainly many hundreds of billions of dollars needed However he does it, because he's changed slightly now, to round up people in the country illegally. Not the people, by the way, I describe in my book who worked for him and who he cheated out of their wages, but round them up. And other things he's discussed, he can't do it unless Congress passes legislation allowing him to do that and providing the money. Have you ever heard of a president of the United States picking a fight with the Speaker of the House and then appointing to run his campaign a guy like Steve Bannon, who says at Breitbart that Paul Ryan is a double agent for Hillary Clinton?